Welcome to the session about digital health business building and scaling. Really happy to have you all of you here today. I just need to start with a small print that this does not constitute any advice or any does not violate applicable laws. Now we can move ahead, and I'm really happy to introduce you to my co-presenters here today. First of all, Amy, our digital therapeutics expert from the New Jersey office, my colleague Stephanie from San Francisco, who is our design expert. And then, as health tech business building is a really hands-on practical thing, I'm particularly happy that we have Ofer Leitner, the president of Happify Health today, as well as Bruce Hellman, the CEO of Umotive, who will talk a bit about their practical experiences and learnings that they had in business building and scaling. First of all, on the next slide, if we move one further, I want to talk a little bit about the basis of our perspective here on digital health business building. First of all, we've followed a tried and tested business building approach that has been used for more than 200 business building and scaling pieces. We also talk about some of the learnings and the experiences from the digital health value pools work, as well as experience from the Global Health Tech Network, a community of more than 800 digital health companies. And on the right, you can just see here also some of the business building stats and the impact that this business building method has delivered, both in terms of return on investment, likelihood of scaling, and then looking at incumbent businesses and business buildings, the margin versus the legacy business. On the next page, you can see that that business building is, of course, an important topic for both startups and incumbents. And while the startup tries to get to distribution, usually the incumbent tries to get to innovation fast. On the next page, we'll see that incumbents and startups, of course, have different advantages as they build and scale businesses. Incumbents have their existing customer base. They've got cash, balance sheet, brand, and subject matter experts that they can rely on. Startups, on the other hand, have rapid, agile ways of working, usually interesting culture, talent attraction, greenfield solution that can help them move faster than building it within a legacy business. And on the next page, we also see that they are often solving for different things. Incumbents often optimize EBIT, think very hard about market share. They have processes in place, technology in place, whereas then startup usually try to move fast, think about exit value, think about investors, and so on. Moving to the next page, I just want to share a little bit more around the incumbent view, because pre-COVID and now during COVID, business building has increased massively in importance for incumbent businesses. While pre-COVID, 35% of incumbent businesses said that business building is an important priority for them. Currently, 58% of incumbent businesses say so. And the most common reasons why they focus now on business building is new revenue streams. They see that customer expectations are shifting, and they are either within or preparing for industry disruptions. Moving to the next page. We see that incumbents in particular find business building usually quite difficult. Just going through the Fortune 100 list and look at all of the corporate business buildings that happened in the last 20 years, you can see that about 15–16% of them have really been blockbuster successes, and the remainder have been partial successes or no success. And a lot of you, of course, can recognize some of the common reasons for failure here. My favorite one is Killed with Love, Dragged Down by Bureaucracy, or also The Revenge of the Mothership, where the new business is actually then creating conflict between the legacy business and the new business. When we move towards digital health business building, of course, then things become usually even more complicated, because on the next page you can see that digital health business building is then actually, in addition, also influenced by a set of country-specific conditions. For example, does this country have a digital health strategy in place that is driving digital health? What about the regulatory environment? What about the reimbursement for digital health? Then there is usually a big dependence on the technical infrastructure, so electronic health records, e-prescription, is that in place? Is that working in the country already? As well as then openness and willingness to use by both healthcare professionals as well as patients and citizens. That's just to kick us off, but now let's move towards the learnings, and over to you, Amy, to take us through this.
In this next section, we will share with you elements to consider as you build a digital health business. And the basis of our perspective stems from in-depth research we've done with over 50 digital health companies themselves, as well as our experiences working with life science companies, venture capital companies, PE funds on digital health innovation. The next page, please. The building blocks that we've summarized are value proposition, robust and compliant products, delightful experience, proven value, scalable model, and talent and agility. And these tend to vary by customer type, as well as what the company's core asset is. As we walk through the building blocks on the next page, you will see that I will be joined by Ofer and Bruce from Happify Health and Umotive, who will share how they approach each of these elements in their respective companies. On the next page, we're going to move to the first building block, which is value proposition. There's a reason we start with this one first when we talk about digital health businesses. It's the foundational building block that everything else builds on or supports. For a business to be successful, it needs to be clear what it is offering, to whom, and what makes it different from the thousands of other companies out there. A few key questions to consider might be, what is the clinical, economic, or experiential unmet need you're trying to address? Or who is the customer or the full set of stakeholders, and what do they care about? For example, for a payer, clinical outcome and cost of care might be the most important metrics, while for patients, experience often matters just as much as outcomes. Other considerations might include, how is what you're offering different from existing alternatives? And how do you foresee adoption, and what barriers can you anticipate? Turning it over to Bruce, how have you approached the value proposition for Umotive?
Great, thanks. This is a very important and interesting question that we've lived through at Umotive. Initially, we were focused on delivering for patients and clinicians in a provider setting, but our value proposition was somewhat unclear, 4 or 5 years ago. Where we focus now is capturing data for researchers, so engaging patients, some of whom you see on this slide here, to capture a lot of data about how they're feeling, their outcomes, their symptoms, and other clinical assessments, and use that to power research. Now, that's a very clear value proposition because it solves the problem for the researcher who needs the data, and it also engages the patient or the participant to be a contributor towards research. And I think over recent years, we've seen the real importance of being a must-have part of delivering a solution, rather than earlier on in the Umotive journey, we were somewhat a nice-to-have. So identifying something where you deliver real value, we've lived the experience of that being absolutely critical.
Thank you so much, Bruce. The second building block that we'll talk through is creating robust and compliant products. And for this one, I will hand it over to my colleague, Stephanie. She'll walk through some of the critical elements to consider, and then over to Bruce, who will share examples from Umotive.
So equally important to a clear value proposition is, of course, delivering on patient safety and thus regulatory requirements. And typically, a quality manual system covers the compliance needs. However, traditionally, that has turned the QMS to be considered as a cost of doing business versus an enabler of enterprise value creation. And in addition, within digital health framework, there's an inherent clash of divergent working methods and cultures, right? In technological side, it's used to work in an agile methodology, which is failing and learning fast in short sprints. The clinical medical approach is highly structured with very lengthy development phases, and particularly in early R&D. So what we've heard from digital health companies, but also have implemented in our own processes, is treating quality and the quality manual system as an enabler to solving those challenges. So, for example, just like when building the patient-facing application, building the QMS from a design thinking, hence user-centric point of view. And because now the organization is considered a user, it also requires for the entire organization to own the quality. And one way of implementing is for combining, for example, the agile process documentation with design control documentation. And that is ironically something that has fed very nicely back into traditional medtech and physical product. Because compliance law is also now embedded within flexible, user-friendly, organically built, automated data collecting workflows. It also naturally fulfills the spirit and not only the letter of those regulations we talked about earlier. And that really creates the actual robustness, because now it can adapt with flexibility to constantly evolving and changing content. And now over to the true experts who have played in the sandbox intensively.
Thank you for that. And I couldn't agree more that quality systems are not just a cost of business, they are actually an enabler, and designed and implemented well can certainly underpin and help the digital health product. I talked earlier about our move from initially working with providers and patients to now our focus on delivering for researchers. And most of our clients are big pharmaceutical companies and CROs, and we therefore have to work within a very regulated industry, working to good clinical practice and many other regulations. So having the right level of robustness and compliance is absolutely essential for what we deliver. And over recent years, we've seen that in implementing quality management systems and better ways of implementing technology, that raises up the quality level for our own team and what we can deliver to clients as well. I think the big takeaway I'd have is that when starting on this journey to build a digital health business, I think it's important to embrace the need for quality. We've now implemented ISO 9001. You really have to embrace it and see this as a part of an enabler. And something that is a benefit to your business, not a cost. It doesn't detract from the real work. This is the real work. It's absolutely vital. And if you don't pay attention to ticking the boxes for things like GDPR, HIPAA, and other privacy regulations, you will only go so far, and then you'll realize that you're not really serving your clients. So this is all part of delivering what is actually a good product and a good service to your customers.
Thank you, Stephanie and Bruce. In our next building block, we talk about delightful experience. This is one that I imagine all of us can relate to as consumers. As consumers, we tend to gravitate toward products and services that are easy to use, intuitive, delightful. Think about your favorite gaming console, or your favorite kitchen gadget, or your favorite social media platform. Why does it attract you and keep you engaged? We should be applying the same focus on experience with our digital health products and services as tech companies and consumer products companies use for everyday items that we all love and use. As we think about the word delightful, one way to break it down is to ask, is it simple to use? Does it integrate with existing journeys, workflows, and processes seamlessly? Is it engaging? And is it personal? Now over to you, Ofer. How have you thought about this building block in the context of Happify Health?
Thanks, Amy. This is a great topic. For us, everything starts with creating delightful experiences. If you don't have the delightful experience that engages the patient, that retains the consumer, you simply don't have an application. So we have to make sure that whatever we do first and foremost is patient-centric and really drive the level of experience that consumers are expecting from their applications outside of healthcare into healthcare. When we began the journey, we spent close to 2.5 years in optimizing this journey to make sure that we got the patient experience right. If you don't get it right, you would see what happens with most healthcare applications that would not survive 30 days retention at an acceptable rate. If you can deliver retention, you can't really deliver clinical protocols, you can't deliver the value over time. So make sure that you really think consumer when you start building the applications. Make sure that you A/B test every single thing, color palette, sounds, colors. Make sure that you understand the emotional attachment of people into the application, and make sure that you drive the right behaviors. When you have that foundation, you can really step forward and making sure that you step into advancing your product through other elements with the confidence that your product would really deliver for consumers.
Thank you, Ofer. The next building block is proven value. This is important to all stakeholders, whether they are a payer, a provider, a patient, or a pharmaco. They want to make sure the thing works. In essence, this is the building block that shows customers your product or service actually does what you say it will. A few things to consider include what evidence would be required to demonstrate your value proposition? How can critical metrics be collected? How will these metrics inform the go-to-market model and strategy? If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we've listed out a few ways that we think about value for a digital health business. It can include improved clinical outcome, improved cost effectiveness or cost of care, or improved patient or user experience, as well as behavior modification. There are a number of ways to measure each of them. We've listed a few here. As companies think through these, it's important to consider how key stakeholders consider value and what methods they will look for to feel comfortable about the value of your business. Turning it back over to Ofer again, how have you and Happify Health approached this proven value building block?
Thanks, Amy. As a multi-platform, multi-channel company, we really kind of began the journey of proving value by understanding on which value attributes needed to be validated according to each of the channels that we decided to take our solutions to market. The employers, self-insured employers may need certain set of outcomes. Payers would need a different set of outcomes. And as you go and make claims in more regulated territory, you need even more rigorous data. My only advice is start early. As soon as you have the product ready, as soon as you think that you nail the consumer experience, start generating evidence, whether that be a real world evidence first. This is something you can generate very relatively quickly, then advance it into randomized controlled trial, then go and validate whether the clients and partners that you work with really see the outcomes that they're expecting to. If not, you're going to repeat this process. And generally speaking, I would say this is a never-ending story in digital health company. You continue to generate more and more evidence that strengthen the value attributes that you're claiming that you're delivering.
Thank you, Ofer. The building blocks we've gone through thus far are all heavily focused on the product or the service. So what does it offer? Is it robust? Is it delightful? Does it have a proven value? This next building block, which is at the top of the pyramid, is where we shift to the commercial model. It's what we call scalable model. This element builds upon the previous building blocks and is visualized here at the top because in order to scale and to be, to grow the company, you really have to have a sustainable business model in place. Questions to consider may include, how will the value be generated or captured and by whom? How will this solution interact with existing solutions and established players? And as we then go to the next page, we lay out a few questions as well as options to consider as you think through the economic model and go-to-market strategy. To be sustainable, a health tech company needs a business model that aligns the users, the payers, the revenue model, and a go-to-market plan. The business model, of course, can evolve as the company matures. Often the business model that a company starts with is different from what it ends up with a few years down the road. Turning back to Happify, Ofer, how is your company addressing the scalable model piece?
Amy, scalability in the business model is very important. As a company in digital health, we should assume that most of these business models are scaling well, but you need to make sure that you pay attention for a few things. One, does your product deployment scale? Can you deploy it at scale? Do you have a business model that scales with volume? And can you start taking advantage of risk sharing models where you basically say, I'm trusting my product to deliver the value and able to capture disproportionate value of the risk as I kind of validate that I can deliver on the outcomes. At Happify, we have various business models that are attempting to go in different channels that we sell and really go after the different models, anywhere from PMPM, PEPM, per engagement and per license, and really try to kind of create a portfolio of business models that are supporting our partner needs.
The last building block is talent and agility, and it's there to support all the other building blocks. And that's why we have it a bit separate from the pyramid, but shown as encompassing the whole of it. No company can create what they aspire to create without the right talent in place, whether it's clinical expertise, tech, regulatory, or design talent. Agility is also important. It's rare to get things right the first time. It's important to have an environment in the company that allows for agility in learning and adapting from failures. Effective digital health companies are able to combine an agile culture committed to quality and the latest development practices and technologies. Bruce, how have you and Umotive approached the talent and agility topic?
This is such a critical part of the model, and such a crucial building block here. Compounded or made even more important, I think, by the pandemic that we've all lived through now, because we're having to bring people into the team. We've expanded by over 50% during lockdown, and are hiring many more talented people into our organization. I think one of the biggest challenges for us in digital health is that balance of the very different types of people. The need for quality professionals, the need for salespeople, the need for developers, service delivery colleagues, and others, which is very different types of people that you need to bring together. I think for us, one of the key things is making sure that as you bring those different groups together, you unite behind a common purpose, a common set of values, and then understanding how what we're building together is making an impact and making a difference. So I think one of the real advantages that we will all have in digital health is that ability to focus people's minds on how we make things better for patients, how we make things better ultimately for health systems as well. And I think that's how we can get that right balance, bringing people together, working effectively, but united around a common goal. That helps it, makes it somewhat easier to recruit brilliant talent into the organization, and then to keep people running in the same direction as well.
Thank you so much, Ofer and Bruce, for joining us. It was great to hear stories from the ground. And so this is it. These were the 6 basic building blocks of a successful digital health business. There's a lot more meat to this, of course, and we do have an article and more materials. Feel free to get in touch. And then with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Tobias, to wrap us up.
Thank you, Amy, Steffi, Ofer, and Bruce. That was great. If you're now curious what the Health Tech Network is and where some of the things that we referenced can be found, just here a quick intro. The Health Tech Network is in essence a network of more than 800 digital health and health tech CEOs globally, ranging from Canada to Australia. If you are a health tech CEO or a digital health CEO or founder and you're interested in joining, please email us as healthtechnetwork@mckinsey.com. And on the next page, you'll also find our contact details and where you can find the paper that we just referenced. You can see here also, if you want to get in touch with Ofer or Bruce and find more information about Happify Health and Umotive, LinkedIn, Twitter, email information, same for Amy, Stephanie, and myself. And at the bottom left, you can see again the Health Tech Network email address, as well as the website where you can find the article about health tech business building that we referenced today. Thank you very much for your attention. It was great being with you today, and have a great rest of your conference.